It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Ruth Horner. We're here in your beautiful home in Jerusalem. And Ruth, you have an amazing family. Your father came from Poland, and your parents came here to Palestine, and it landed up in Cape Town. And then they came back, and you here in Israel. So could you tell us a little bit about your family roots and a little bit about your family history?
Sure. I'm Ruth Mibashan, by the way. Ruth Horner is my family name, which I use. I've gone back to my own family name, but amongst friends, I'm Ruth Mibashan because I married Reuben Mibashan. So my parents, Hannah and Alexander Horner, used to tell us about their history. They wanted us to know the history. And my father especially, in his older age even, wanted it recorded. So he asked my sister Judy, hence the book is called Remember Judy, to tell his story for the family. So my mother used to listen to this all quietly, and then later she decided to write her own story, but it never got published or anything. It's all in scraps of paper. So I have bits of information about the family from that as well. My father was a great figure in the family. He was somebody special. Everybody else thought he was different. He was born in Krakow, the second son in a family of 5, I think it was, 3 sisters and an older brother. He was born in 1901. And to a Haredi family. Well, they weren't called Haredi. They were, what do you call them?
Orthodox. Were they Hasidic?
Hasidim. They were Hasidim. And his father was had a wonderful voice, and he was the chazan of the big shul. That's all I know, the big shul in Krakow. And they had a little small shop that sold delicatessens and cheeses mainly. The Poles used to bring in the butter and the cheese. They used to package it, and they also imported cheese from all over Europe. Small little corner shop. And my father was kind of a zhulik, if that's the word I can use, and used to help himself to things in the shop to eat and etc. as a young boy, growing boy. Anyway, during the First World War, his father was conscripted to the Polish army, payout and everything. He went off to the army. And so the mother was left with the shop and the children to look after the family. My father's older brother wasn't very useful, as my father used to tell me, in making decisions. So it was almost left to my father to make the decisions for the family. A young boy of 14. Anyway, during the war, he got involved with the youngsters in the area, young Jewish boys, and he joined a group of young Jews who they took arms from some of the soldiers who were discharged from the army, and they used to go out protecting the villages around Krakow from pogroms. There were no pogroms in Krakow itself, as far as I know, but they were in the villages around, and he formed this he was part of this Jewish league of protecting the villages. And he also joined Shomer HaTzair, and they formed a group for coming to Israel, to Palestine, and he formed it actually from this young group, and others heard about it and they started joining, and they used to go to a farm and learn to dig and plant to get ready hakshara, what we used to call hakshara in South Africa. And then when the father came back at the end of the war, 1918, they got ready for going to Palestine. So they were preparing to come to Palestine, this group, and they did. They went to all different places in Europe first. They went to Czechoslovakia. My father had family in Czechoslovakia, so that was one of the reasons they went to Czechoslovakia, to say goodbye to his family who were living there. And then they went to Vienna, I think, to the grave of, I can't remember whose grave it was, maybe Herzl, I'm not sure. And then they got a boat and came to Palestine. So they were the group, they called the Krakow Group. And they joined other groups, and they were organized, and they were sent to do various things. They started off in kibbutz near Jerusalem, Kiryat Anavim. And years later, when my father came, he was very proud, and he showed me, oh, I built that road into Kiryat Anavim. He was a very strong person, got himself fit. He was interested in health and eating well, eating good food. And so apart from Kiryat Anavim, they sent them to other places. I've got a photograph that I got from the internet. There's an internet site, by the way, with photographs by the American colony people who were in Israel at the time, and they photographed everything. And all these photographs were in the Library of Congress until a few years ago, when they started publishing them. They started publishing these pictures every week, half a dozen photos. And I got onto their website, and lo and behold, I see my father in the Krakow group straightening the dunes outside Tel Aviv, and with their little tents, like the tupi tents behind him, which he described to us. And there he is in the group, standing on the side, straight up. The others are lounging a bit, but he's now the leader. Anyway, they also sent the group to, not Afula maybe, no, I can't remember, I think it's Afula. Anyway, he got the malaria.
In the Beit Shan?
No, not as high as that. The one near...
The Hula Valley?
No, not far from Netanya. Forgotten the name of the town. My memory is not what it used to be. Anyway, he got malaria. He was putting up telephone poles, and he got malaria there, and he had to go to a hospital in Haifa, and they said he couldn't work for 2 years because his liver had been affected. But remember, this chap hadn't gone to school in Krakow. He went to Cheder for a little bit, but he was a Julik. He never bothered to learn anything. He used to run away, and he didn't learn anything. But he was bright enough, and when he came to Palestine, and before that, when he joined this group, he had already cut off his payot, and he had sort of left the religious side of things. And when he came to Palestine, I mean, he was a Jew, he was a Zionist, and he said he learned to be about Palestine and to be a Zionist when he started fighting the pogroms. That's when he decided, no, this Poland is not for us, we have to go to our country. And that's when the seed of Zionism started, because they weren't Zionists, the Jews in Krakow. Anyway, so he arrived with his group, as I said, and he couldn't do any more physical work. So what can he do? He hasn't been to school. He went to standard 3. That was all he did at school. So, and he was looking for a job. So he heard that they were looking for, he knew how to play the violin. He had a little violin. As I said, he was a Julik. He took money from the till of the shop during the First World War and bought a violin. And he practiced and he took lessons, and a real, not a usual boy. And so he knew how to play the violin very well. And he heard they were looking for musicians in Jerusalem, and they were starting an orchestra. So he came and they accepted him, and he was the leader of the second violins, and that was the Palestine Symphony Orchestra, which became the Philharmonic of today. But so he was just the second violinist, head of the second violin. And that wasn't really enough. He wanted to do more, so he heard that the British police were also starting a band, an orchestra. So he went with his violin, and they laughed at him. They said, "No, we don't want violins, we need wind instruments, and if you can play the clarinet or something, we could think about it." He said, yes, he could do that too, but he couldn't. But he quickly borrowed one and practiced a bit and got the job. So he was the clarinetist of this new police band, as well as the saxophonist, because I think they're similar, you blow into each of them. And the police band also had a smaller group called the jazz band. And Captain Silver was the head of the orchestra of the police band. And I know I wanted to contact his son here in Jerusalem, but he died just a couple of years ago. So I never managed to make that connection. So during my father's police work, he wasn't a real policeman, he was a musician, but officially a policeman. And one day Zev Vilnai was, he became later professor of geography or whatever in Israel, an important person. But at the time he was a young geologist, geographer, and he wanted to write the first travel book about Israel. So he came to the police and asked for a policeman to join him. And my father was chosen. And these two of them went on horseback. My father had a gun, and he was now protecting this chap, Zev. And they went all over the Middle East, because it was Britain. They went to Egypt, they went to Jordan, they went to Damascus, they went to Lebanon, they went all over the Middle East. Later on I had that book, but it's disappeared. I don't know where it is now. But the book written by Zev Vilnai. Anyway, during my father's years at the police, he had a very good relationship with the big bosses. They liked him. He was different. He was exciting person. But he decided he wanted to be a doctor. What, a chap who goes to school up to standard 3. So they allowed him every day during his police time to go to school in Jerusalem with the younger boys. And he got his matriculation in the gymnasium in Jerusalem. And he remained friendly all the years, even from South Africa. He used to write and keep in touch with his schoolboy friends who were many years younger than him, because he was in his late 20s already. And he got his matriculation, And they liked him also, and they helped him get to write and get accepted for studying medicine abroad. And he got accepted with a full scholarship and was waiting for the papers to arrive with the money for the boat, etc., etc. But then we come to 1929. And in 1929 there were riots in Jerusalem. And they said to my father, well, you're now a policeman. We need you as an ordinary policeman. And you and another chap from the orchestra and 2 Arab policemen have to go up to Beit Vagan, where you live, to protect Beit Vagan. Beit Vagan had 12 houses, little houses with gardens. It was Beit Vagan, that was what it was called. And they were due to be attacked from the other side, from Malcha, by the Arabs. So can you imagine the thought of the British police to send 2 Jewish policemen and 2 Arab policemen to protect Beit Vagan against Arabs? Who knows if the Arabs themselves didn't live on the side of the attackers. Anyway, my father wasn't very keen to tell us the whole story of what happened there. But I went into it later, and from what my mother tells us, I've pieced together the story. A Jewish policeman was stabbed to death by the Arab policeman. And then he tried to kill my father as well with a knife, and he cut his upper arm right down to the bone. And I always, as a kid, I used to ask my father, why is there this big dip in your upper arm? And he would brush me off and say, oh, it's nothing, it's nothing. But my father came out of that alive. So I presumed that he dealt with those Arabs, the 2 of the Arabs. He must have. How could he have come out alive? Because the rest of the story I heard from my mother's younger sister, much younger than my mother, 11, she was 11 at the time. And I can jump now to my mother's story, I think, to bring this in. My mother had also come to Palestine with her family from Poland, from Radomsk. My mother was 15 in the middle of her matric, and she stopped her exams in order to organize the family and the larger family, the 2 aunts as well, with their family. They all came together, and my mother, 15 years old, was amazing. She organized it all. And they came to Tel Aviv, and the father had come earlier to get a house, and he took a house in Neve Tzedek, a big house. And I went to see this house years later because I remembered the address. I used to address the letters from my mother in South Africa to her mother in Neve Tzedek, so I knew the name of the road, Shabazi Street, and I knew the number. So I went to see this house. So it was a big house with a big empty patio in the middle, with an oven in the middle, and the rooms all around, with stairs going up, metal stairs with a second row. The house is still there, but it's all very fancy now. I stood there, and the owner let me enter to visit this house. But anyway, my mother came with all her family.
Well, what year did your mother come?
1920. She was born 1924, I think, 3 or 4. My father came earlier. Why am I talking about my mother? Oh yes, so my mother left the family in Tel Aviv in this one place with all the three families living in each one in a room with all the children, and she came to Jerusalem. There was a course on childcare, and she decided to do that course in Jerusalem. So she had to work to get money for the course. So she worked in a tailor shop or in a dressmaker shop, sewing dresses and fixing things, and worked in restaurants, etc. Anyway, she joined the course and finished the course, and then Thelma Yellin Bentwich, if the name means anything to you, the Bentwich family from England, but Thelma Yellin was a daughter. She's a well-known personality in Jerusalem. She was looking for somebody to look after her children, because she was a musician and had soirees, etc. And so she chose my mother. So my mother was the childcare person for Thelma Yellin, and then later she became the childcare person for the children of the first commissioner, Herbert Samuel. And that's, now we've reached 1929.
Can I ask you, why did your mother decide to leave, especially in her matric year?
Never, the whole family was coming. The whole family wanted to come on Aliyah. She never told me why they became Zionists. Didn't know. They were in Radomsk. As far as I know, there wasn't much going on in Radomsk. My mother went to a Catholic school. They were very religious. The father was a scribe, but they seemed to be more, they didn't mind the daughter going to a Catholic school. They used to go past the Catholic school and spit. Excuse me. But she used to say that, and they used to change the prayers, you know, to make them Jewish rather than Catholic. All those tricks they used to do, but they also learned French. It was a different kind of setting, but they still wanted, the whole family wanted to come. Mother, two aunts with husbands and children, they all came at the same time. So now at 29, my mother was working at the High Commissioner, and the other family, the rest of her family was still in Tel Aviv, and the father was a scribe writing scrolls, Torah scrolls, and he needed ink and he needed parchment. So he sent his young daughter. You might know the name from South Africa, Bobrov. She became a Bobrov. Okay, but she was the daughter, my mother's young sister, also very bright, aged 11. He's put her on a bus and said, go and buy at the shop in Rehov Yafo, Jaffa Street. At the last bus terminus, there's the shop for the parchment and the ink, and then you get on the bus and you come back. So she came and she bought the ink, etc. And it was 1929 and the riots, and there were no buses going back. So she didn't know what to do. So she gets in touch with her sister at the High Commissioner's house, wherever that was. It wasn't on the later, when it was built on the new big one. And my mother tells her younger sister, we'll go and sleep in my boyfriend's room because he's on duty. He's not there today. 1929. So where was my father's room? He managed to rent a room in Mishkanot Sha'ananim. There's that long house of the Montefiore house, and they gave him the last room. I went to visit that room. It's a hotel now. I suppose they put him there because of the noise he was making practicing his music, maybe. Anyway, so she went to sleep in that room. It was open, and she went to the room there. She spent the day there. And she could sleep there if it was night, but it wasn't night yet. And then all of a sudden, this man turns up carrying a dead body on his shoulder. Her brother-in-law, who she hadn't met, wasn't a brother-in-law, her sister's boyfriend, who she hadn't met before, in his uniform of policeman, carrying the dead body, his blood pouring from his arm. So she tore a sheet and 11 years old, she tore a sheet and tied up his arm and washed his, as she told me, she washed his uniform just a little bit in the front. And then he went on carrying this dead body of his friend down the Mishkanot, down the whole area to the old city, to the Kishla, to the police base next to the Tower of David was the police station. And I've got photographs on that police station. And so she told me that story. When did she tell me the story? When she was far over 100 years of age in Savion. Because when my parents, I didn't tell you, they ended up in Cape Town, right? And she came to Cape Town to join them and then married Jack Bobroff. That's in Cape Town.
How did your parents meet?
So there, my mother used to go in Jerusalem when she was in the in this training course. You know, there wasn't much to do in Jerusalem. She used to go to the sports days. There were open sports days. And my father was a great sportsman. And she says she fell in love with this guy's legs. He was he was the fastest runner in the Middle East. That was what he was called, the fastest runner in the Middle East. And he has so many stories about how he used to beat certain people in the races and they wouldn't forgive him, etc. Anyway, he got medals, lots of medals, gold medals, which he brought to South Africa. And I, as a child, and my sister and two brothers, we used to play with these medals. But then he sold them later to get some money because we were very poor in South Africa. But anyway, so she met him from the sports thing. And then later, he used to come with his jazz band from the police to the place where there was the Amona Nativ, the High Commissioner's house. Because he used to have balls and people coming from abroad and he used to entertain them. And my father was very often the policeman guarding this place. I've got a photograph of him guarding the High Commissioner's house. And with the jazz band performing there, my mother used to fill their empty suitcases with the leftover cucumber sandwiches and cookies, and that were all prepared for the guests. These were leftovers. So that's how they really became acquainted. He wasn't interested in getting married, but she was. So I think that was more on her part. And then in 1929, with this happening, she tells us that the next day, the trees in Jerusalem, there were signs on the trees in Rehov Yafo. I mean, it was a small place in those days. And the signs were written, Horner alive or dead, £1,000. The Arabs wanted him. It's not the Jews, not the police. The Arabs wanted to get hold of him. So he apparently killed those two Arabs. He must have, in Beit Vagan. So as I said earlier, the police liked him very much. The chief of the police called him and said, "Listen, you've got to leave the country. They're going to kill you here. And I think you should leave straight away." And they gave him papers with a different name. It was a different name. He didn't tell us the name, But years later, when I was in London and he came, they used to come on a visit, my parents, and I had visitors, guests for Pesach, and I would say to Dad, come to the table, we want to start, meet my friends, Professor so-and-so from Palo Alto, and introduce him to our guests. He would say, that was my name once, for a short while, and then that bit of the story came out. I can't remember the name. Zimmerman, it could have been Zimmerman, I'm not sure. Yes, it was Professor Zimmerman was one of the guests, so it could have been him. Anyway, so they quickly got married. The papers for the university hadn't arrived yet, so the police in charge said they would post them on to Poland. So go to your parents in Poland and we'll post the papers on to Poland. So that's what they did. They got married quickly.
They got married here?
Yes, in Israel.
Do you know where?
Tel Aviv. I've got the marriage certificate that says Tel Aviv. Well, I suppose they needed a family, or, the family was in Tel Aviv, my mother's family. And they gave him this name, this new name to leave the country, because they said in Jaffa port, they were all Arabs, so he couldn't go with the name of Horner. So that's why they had to change his name. Just for the travel papers. My mother was already now Horner officially. So they got to Poland, to Krakow. My father, burnt black from the work, shorn head, no payot, short trousers, sandals. They must have thought that he's gone really mad. But they liked my mother. She, as I wrote previously, she was a hit. They loved her and they showed her off to all the neighbors. Have a look what Sender brought back from Palestine. Sender was his nickname, Alexander Sender. Anyway, they hung around there for a while, waiting for the papers to come. For quite a few months they didn't come. So they really were at a loss of what to do. And then they met a couple of gentlemen that my father knew from his trips to Egypt. And they said, we are going to Africa. We've got an uncle who's a reverend or a rabbi in Cape Town, Reverend Rabinovitz in Cape Town. And we're going to Cape Town. Why don't you come as well? So they thought, well, why not really? I mean, they can't stay in Poland. My father couldn't anymore, looking like he looked and without really a good religion, and he wanted to study medicine anyway. So they worked. My mother worked in all sorts of things. She was in a laundry, a Chinese laundry, learning how to iron. She taught me how the Chinese iron, and I was expert ironing at shirts when my husband was alive. And my father did ordinary laboring. They got money for the boat trip, and they borrowed money apparently for, you had to have some money when you came into the country to prove that you weren't destitute. So they borrowed a little bit, I can't remember, I don't know from whom. And my father went first actually, and my mother came, I think, some months later. And well, that was the story until they got to South Africa. In South Africa, you want that part of the story?
It's fascinating. It's just...
Oh, it was a difficult time because, as I say, he was different. He wasn't after money. He was interested in health, good food, and sport, good air. So he tried to work. He registered for medicine at the university, They accepted his matriculation from Jerusalem, but he had to do English again. So in the day he was at university. In the afternoon he was at the college, the technical college, doing his English matric, but he needed money. And in those days every movie house had an orchestra. And so he played in the orchestras of the various movie houses to make money, and that was in the evening. So he had a full day. And he also played in the band. There was a band of the Cape Town Municipal Council that played in the gardens. You're not from Cape Town, so you don't know Cape Town. Cape Town's got beautiful gardens.
I know that. I've been there quite a few times.
The gardens, the garden shul next door.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So, and the Dutch built that garden for vegetables in the 1600s. And he also played on the pier. I never knew the pier. There was a pier once going into the sea. And they had the band going there on the weekends, and that's where he used to play. So he managed for 2 years this in university, and he had to stop because the movies now became talkies. They didn't need orchestras anymore, so he didn't have work. So he stopped his medical training in the middle of his 3rd year and thought he'd go back again sometime in future. But he never managed. But he has 3 children who are doctors, and he read all our journals and all our books from cover to cover. So I think he was more of a doctor than we were, almost. Free with his advice, of course. And so then he had to look for other work, and he, you know, the Jews who came at the same time all became quite wealthy in Cape Town. But he couldn't do, he tried the kind of work that they all did. They all started as selling, buying and selling. They would buy cheaply, wholesale, and then sell at a higher price, and they would form a collection, you know, collect the money for the payment. And they grew from that. They would all open shops and etc. My father was interested in people, so all his customers became friends. He would invite them over to see our house, and I had to play the piano for them later. I mean, my mother made cake and tea for them. I mean, these were the customers, and they were friends rather than... Spoke to them in Arabic, but some of them were Muslims, so they liked him from that. Even my father knew Arabic from Jerusalem. And that's what we were like when we were children. And my father managed to buy a small piece of land outside Cape Town. It became part of Cape Town, of course, but it's a suburb called Brooklyn. Nobody knew where it was. All the letters from Israel and elsewhere used to come to us via Brooklyn, New York, because nobody knew this place, Brooklyn, in South Africa. So letters would go to New York by mistake. So we lived in this house with a big ground, and he turned it into a kind of a mini kibbutz almost, or moshav. We had 2 cows, we had 2 goats, we had lots of chickens, ducks. I was in charge as a child of the duck pond. I used to go and sweep it out every day. He dug a well. We had all the minim, all the trees in the garden, vegetables. I mean, that was what he thought was important in life, you know, education and music. So we all studied music. We didn't get anything fancy. Clothes we never got. Rosh Hashanah, okay, I got my sister's dress shortened for me, and she got a new one. which my mother made, things like that. We were very poor, and we had new shoes, of course, on Rosh Hashanah, because our feet were growing, and that was the only pair of shoes we had. I mean, when I went to university, I only had my school shoes. Can you believe it? 16 years old, and I had only school shoes. It's unbelievable, because I wasn't a demander. My sister Judy, who did the book, she demanded things. She demanded. If she wanted new shoes, she'd cut the old ones and she'd get them. And I was more of a realist. I understood the situation. And so we grew up in this difficult place.
Were you part of a Jewish community?
There were very few people. There were 2 other Jewish families in Brooklyn. But we were part of the Brooklyn-Maitland Jewish community. And Maitland had a big Jewish community. And that's where we all went to shul, and that's where we all went to school, junior school. And my sister went off to Herzliya High School. My brother went to Sachs, and the other one went to, they thought it's important for the boys, he went to Herzliya. But I heard them talking at night how much it would cost to send me to Herzliya. So I said in the morning, I want to stay in Maitland. So I stayed in Maitland High School, where it cost 1 penny for the bus ticket. You know, I was, I think, a good girl in those days.
Were there other Jewish kids in your class or in your
boys.
school?
In high school, it was an amazing situation. We had a class of about 9, 8 Jewish boys and me. It was like private tuition. And we all did well in this world, the boys and me.
So all the boys were Jewish?
Yes. The Jewish boys stayed in Maitland. And we had wonderful teachers.
And you were the only girl in the class?
In that stream. There was another stream of girls doing, I don't know, typing. I don't know what else they did, but this was the academic stream. And people that I'm in contact with to this day, of the boys, you know, those who are alive still.
And Ruth, growing up, did you ever encounter any anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic?
Yes, sure, all the time in Brooklyn. We knew it from the beginning. We knew about the war, of course, okay? Our dining room was converted into a war room with maps on the wall, and my father, and he bought a radio, especially during the war, and he would listen every day. It was the BBC, I think, came on BBC, and he would follow where the war was going on. We had this big map, and he would mark on the map, etc., if they were where Krakow was, and you know.
And can I ask, what happened to your family in Poland? On your mother's side and your father's side?
Well, my mother's side all came out.
Were there any other distant relatives from your mother's side?
Only my mother's older sister, the eldest one, who came with them all to Palestine, and she was a beauty. She won the beauty prize in Tel Aviv. The queen, it was in Pesach, not Pesach, Purim. She was a beauty, got the crown as a queen, beauty queen. And then a guy came from Katowice, which is near Germany. He came and took her back as a bride. So they got married and went back to Germany, to Katowice. He had a big steel plant. They were very wealthy. And he had a steel works. And of course, you know, so she and a baby were shot in the street. That we know from a report from someone. She didn't go to the gas chambers. She was shot in the street holding her baby.
And her husband?
Yeah, off to the gas chambers.
They were all
yes.
killed?
They're in the Yad Vashem's list, yes. But my father's family, he thought he was the only survivor. On his immediate family, he was the only one.
What happened to the rest of the family?
No, they gone.
They were deported?
No, we don't know where. Nothing. We know nothing about them. They're gone. His mother, his father, his sisters, his brother, brother's wife, brother's children. Gone.
When did your father find out that they were killed, or that they weren't
we
coming?
never found out. After the war, we started looking. He didn't know how to look. I didn't know how to look. We didn't have contacts. How do you look for family? And he used to write to friends in America. He had, from school days, he had some friends all over the world, and he used to write, and can you try to find if there's any Horners alive? Because if there's a Horner alive, it's our family. And they all came back to say, no, they don't know of anybody called Horner. So he didn't look in England. He looked in America mainly. That's all he looked for, America. He thought everybody went to America. And so the years passed, and he knew he had this very, very wealthy family in Frankfurt. That, in fact, on their way back to Palestine, originally to Palestine, they went via Frankfurt to this millionaire family who accepted my mother to come in, and they didn't want this young man to come in, you know, short pants. They were also religious. And he had to force them to prove that he was a Horner he had a slit in his nose, and all the Horners had slits in the middle of their nose. I don't. So he proved to them that, look at your nose, look at my nose, we're the same. So they did accept him, of course, and my mother looked after the children in that house. They accepted her for a few months, and then before they're on their way to South Africa. And what was the question you asked me?
After the war, so...
Oh yes, so after the war, we thought we were the only ones alive. And in about 1960, my father saw in the Jewish Chronicle in Cape Town an advert for Alexander Horner. So he said, someone's looking, can't be looking for me. Maybe it's my cousin who was brought up in the same bed as me, who later came to visit me in Palestine. This cousin from Poland visited him in Palestine, went back to Poland. So maybe he survived, and the family are looking for him, or looking. We didn't quite know. So he answered this advert, and it was the cousin's daughter who had survived, and she wasn't looking for her father, who she knew had been shot, trying to escape somewhere. The father was shot, but she survived with her mother in Poland, and they managed to get somewhere, I think, I'm not sure if it was Switzerland or not, but she managed to get put into a nunnery, with the nuns.
A convent?
A convent. And the mother was blonde. She went off, and amongst the people, I suppose, she survived. And this young girl who was my age, so she wasn't very old. She's a year older than me, so she couldn't have been very old. A young kid ran away from the convent. And she was picked up by a gentleman who said, come into my house. And he took her into his house. He was newly married, a Christian man, Christian wife. And they looked after her for a few years. And then the mother came to claim her at the convent, and then found that she had run away, and then asked around, found her. Okay, so she found her, they went to Belgium, and she lived in Belgium.
And when she found her, they reconnected?
Yes, it was only during the 2 years of the war that she was there. The first she was with her mother, then later with the convent. And then she went to Belgium, became super duper wealthy with a husband in the diamond business, who later came to South Africa, had a diamond mine and aeroplanes, very wealthy people, extremely wealthy. But we didn't know at the time. Here she was, not married, chosen to be a hostess on the Brussels fair. There was a Brussels fair. After the war, each country used to have a fair, and that was the Brussels fair. So she was actually looking for my father, because she knew that from her father, who had visited my father in Palestine, and knew that my father had gone to South Africa. That bit of the story she knew. So she put the advert in the paper. So we have contact with her, and I have contact with her. And as I say, they're very wealthy, and whenever there's a wedding, I go to it all over the world. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, grandchildren's weddings. We had one 2 weeks ago in the Tower of David. They took over the Tower of David. But a previous grandchild got married in the Israel Museum. And now this is the bit of the story that brings it together. I was sitting at the table, they took over the whole garden of the museum for the party, with tables under these enormous tents. The museum was open all night for the guests. And I'm sitting next to a young gentleman, lovely man. And, you know, I always talk to people. So I said, and what are you doing at this family gathering? So he said, well, I'm friendly with the grandmother. How? I said, so what, how? So he said, well, my father during the war looked after her when she was a child. He took her in and looked after her. He didn't know because he was too young. They'd had this boy after the war, right? He was a young man, and he had an art collection, and he was an art dealer, a big shot in Switzerland. And he died some years later, very young, so it was a tragedy. But he told me the story of his parents taking in this girl who was from the nun place, and he told me an amazing story. His father was dying, and on his deathbed he told him, because the wife was Catholic, very very religious Catholic, and the boy is Catholic, the man that I was sitting next to. And he said, my father told me on his deathbed that he was Jewish. So no wonder he picked up this girl and brought her home, the child.
He knew she was Jewish?
Yes, yes. She'd run away from the nuns. You know how the stories are interwoven with us Jews all over the world, and
he came for the wedding.
Huh?
He came for the wedding.
He came for the wedding, yes, of her grandson, yes, who married a girl from South America. Our family is spread all over the world, and that whole wealthy family from Brussels. I used to go everywhere with the bar mitzvah to Canada, to Dallas, to Belgium. I mean, I used to go. I used to feel this is family. My father told me, you know, we haven't got family, you must keep to your family. So I do, to this day. 2 weeks ago, the wedding. And they like me, we're in touch, so
that's
it's
wonderful.
Lovely, yes. So that's my father's family. But more recently, I discovered some more family. I told you that this family in Frankfurt were also very wealthy people before the war. And some years before we made the Aliyah, my mother was on a visit to Jerusalem, and it was a hot Khamsin day in Tel Aviv, and she looked as if she was going to faint or something, and an English lady said to her, "Come and I'll give you a cup of tea." So she gave her a cup of tea and asked her name. My mother said Horner, and she said, she was from England, this lady, and my mother, she said to my mother, "Have you got any relatives in England?" My mother says, "No, Horners, we don't have any Horner relatives." So they said, well, they know of two brothers in England called Horner, and we made contact with those two brothers. And they were two of the sons of that family in Frankfurt that my mother looked after. You know, my mother looked after children there. And these were the two older brothers. She didn't look after them. But these two guys left Europe early, long before the war, with all their money. They owned the Dead Sea, something enormously big at the Dead Sea. They built the whole timber mine complex for the workers. I haven't been there. I was there once years ago, but the Horner, the Horner guest house or something for the workers. And in the shul not Golders Green, north of in London.
In Hampstead?
Yes, and below Hampstead, Grange Road, sure. It's not Hampstead. Is it Hampstead? Swiss Cottage. They were the gubbis there. I got married in that shul. The one cousin walked me down the aisle in that shul. I was in the bridal suite, the Horner bridal suite, you know, decorated with the Horner name. They were important people. They died, and I thought there was nobody of this family left because they had no children. So in America, one day in Israel, my brother, I've got a brother here in the Tanya area, on the kibbutz now, he stopped at a traffic light, and next to him was an ambulance, and it said, "Donated by the Horner sisters." So I thought, who are these Horner sisters? So I had a difficult way how to get in touch with who donated they wouldn't give me the names of who the donors were. Magen David Adom here said, we don't have any donors by that name. It must have been American donors. So I contacted American Magen David Adom. They wouldn't give me a name either, but they said we can try to contact the people and then make contact with you, which they did. And then I found out that these two girls were daughters of that same family in Frankfurt. There were the two boys, they were teenagers, and then there were two daughters that my mother looked after when she was there for a few months. And these were the two daughters.
And they survived? They
survived, and they have big families, but I went to visit. One day I actually went to visit the one.
Where do they live?
They're dead now, but they've got family. The one had a son who I was in contact with and I visited and who came here, and he was called Schmeidler, and he married the lady went blind. She was a docent at the Jewish Museum. But I went and made a special trip one day to Maryland to visit her. And she was also into fitness. I think there's something in our family to do with fitness. But she's passed away already, and the other one has passed away, the two girls.
How did the girls survive?
I don't know. I think they must have left also before the war. They must have, if the older brothers left.
And the parents?
No, the parents died. They died natural deaths. So the two boys left. The parents stayed but died. They're not in the Shoah. But one brother is, one uncle that is, in the Shoah. That's the only one on the list at the Yad Vashem. And so I try my best to contact all these new, but I've lost contact now with the third generation in America. Don't think they're particularly interested anymore in, or ever were interested in, going back to history. Really, it's a pity, but, and they were not so close anyway, they're distant family. But to the cousin one, I'm in contact with all this family, and I like them and they like me, and we get on. So...
But were the sisters close with the brothers?
The brothers were much older. They were teenagers when my parents stayed with the family in Frankfurt for those few months, and the girls were much younger. They needed looking after, so my mother was allowed to look after them. The one had of these two women in America, the one was all into fitness, but the other was into drugs, and not hard drugs on the street, but medication drugs, and I think she died from that. But she had a family and all. So that's my parents' family, and a bit about my own level of family, but you don't need to know about us.
And Ruth, can I just ask you, the three of the siblings decided to do medicine.
Yes, I was the first.
How come you decided to?
Was it
because of the influence of your father?
I don't know. I suppose my sister, my older sister, who died fairly recently in South Africa, aged 90s, she had dyscalculia, or not with words. She's very good with words. She even did a BA in her, when she was bringing up her children, she did a BA. But she was not good at maths and numbers and things, so she couldn't do any other degree. She did a radiography, and she became a radiographer. But I was a shy kid, very shy. In junior school, I only went to school half days because I was sickly, very sickly child. So I didn't even go much to Cheder, because Cheder was after school. But I did go to my music lessons, so I cheated on that. So I managed the music lessons, because that was important for the family, and I liked it. And we had a small class, I told you, and I was brilliant at mathematics. I got the highest marks in South Africa. And
for mathematics?
Mathematics. I got 100%. Okay, I was good at maths. What can I say? You're either born with it or you're not. It's not being clever. And he thought I was going to do maths at university, and he was already coaching me on the calculus and other things that I would be learning in mathematics. And the music teacher thought I would be doing music, because I was winning all the diplomas. And I didn't tell anybody. They used to go in the class asking, what you're going to do when you finish school. This one, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. Became a neurosurgeon. This one was going to be a mathematician. Didn't become. They all had their aims. And I didn't know. I couldn't say what I was going to do. But I went and registered for medicine. I got a full bursary, and that was it.
And you studied at UCT?
UCT. I finished my training in UCT.
It's the University of Cape Town.
Cape Town. I wanted to be a pediatrician. That's what I wanted to do. I think it was because I was taken once a month to the hospital when I was a child. Once a month I was in the hospital. There was a lovely old Dr. Mervish, who was a pediatrician in Cape Town. I remember having to come in and sit on his lap. I was skinny and small and sickly, and they didn't know what was wrong with me, and I wouldn't eat. And my mother used to arrange for me on my way home from half-day school to pop into this person in Maitland to have a lunch, and that person in Maitland to have tea and biscuits and milk and whatever. And she thought they had fat children, so they must be knowing how to feed their children. I didn't eat. I couldn't eat. I don't know what I had wrong with me, but nobody knew. I think I might have had TB, and nobody knew. I really think I had tuberculosis. Because at medical school we all had the HIV test on admission, and everybody got a positive or negative HIV test, and my whole arm swelled up. So I think probably I had TB as a child. Or maybe still had it, I don't know.
And where did you specialize?
Anyway, so I specialized. They didn't like female pediatricians in my day. So I went for 1 year to the city hospital, which was infectious diseases. The pediatrician, a pediatrician who became my mentor, advised me to go there first. So I did that first. And then they started in Cape Town, before anywhere else in the world, a full-time person in the newborn unit.
The neonatal?
Yes. And there was a big argument. There was no neonatal unit. It was in maternity department. And the professor wanted me to be there. And there was a big fight amongst the professors. How can we waste a trainee doctor's time just on that? It's an unimportant subject. But I loved it, and I was there full time as a neonatal senior houseman, it was called. And immediately after that, I wanted to start training as a registrar, as an ordinary pediatric registrar. And I went to see the professor, who was a funny Scottish man who didn't like women. And I went in for an interview, and he said to me, "It's not too late to change your mind, you know. I don't think you're suitable for us. I don't think it's too late to change your mind." So I got up and I thanked him, and I said, "Well, I'm going to be a pediatrician and I'll do it elsewhere." And he called me back from the door. And he said, "Okay, you can join." So, I mean, I wasn't happy or anything. It was the way my luck was falling always. I was always in luck. My father always writes in the book that my sister recorded that he was lucky. He was lucky from birth even, he said. When he was born, he was born with a caul, C-A-U-L, which means, I don't know, the baby came out covered in the covering of the uterus part. I don't know, he was covered in something. And he writes such a funny story about his parents cutting this thing into tiny pieces and giving it to the community because this was a good luck sign. And he reckons his good luck in his life was from that. To be born with a caul or whatever it is, covered in the membrane of the baby. Normally the membrane breaks and the baby comes out, but here the baby came out with its caul. Anyway, so I did my full pediatric training, And then I became a consultant, and I was already given my first job. And then it was June 67. My parents were planning to come back anyway for years. They never became South African. Never. They were always stateless. All the years in
They
South
didn't
Africa.
take up residency?
No. Residence, but never
Didn't get citizenship?
Citizenship, no. My mother did just before she left. Had to do a matric exam and swear and learn Afrikaans, but she did it so she could get her pension. And so she got her pension while she was living here in Israel. Small pension from South Africa. But my father didn't, and that's why when my mother and I left in June 67 on the first plane that was allowed out. In fact, I was a volunteer, and they phoned me to say that there's a place on the plane for you, and it's the same plane that my mother was on. So we went together. And my father stayed behind to sell up the house and that, and he became South African. At that last final stage, he had needed a passport, so he became South African. Last minute. And I wanted to say about our connection to the Israel thing. In 1948, Israel became Israel. And the first consul who came to South Africa was Yehuda Golan. And Yehuda Golan was one of the boys in my father's class at school that he'd been in contact with over the years.
That's amazing.
So when Yehuda Golan came to Cape Town, he had a house not far from us. They put him in Milnerton, which is the next suburb north. And they had a big driver, an enormous black car with a driver called Joseph. And they used to come to visit us in Brooklyn to this house with the cows and the chickens and everything. And I used to escape. They spoke in Hebrew. I never knew Hebrew. So I used to go out with some cookies to the driver, and I became friendly with Joseph, the driver. And there was a big function in Cape Town for the first year of Israel becoming Israel. And my father was invited to sing, and he had a wonderful voice, my father. Wonderful voice, bass, a beautiful bass. And he was invited to sing at that opening ceremony, which was a great honor. My father used to make money also. As I said at the beginning, over all these years, he had no job really. He had this small business of buying and selling to his friends almost. He also sang in various shul choirs and got paid. And he used to sing at weddings. And he used to go to Paul, to Worcester, to all the country towns where there were Jewish weddings. They would invite him to sing at the wedding. And he had a accompanist on the organ, Mr. Scher, who was the choir master of the Garden Shul. He was the organist. And my father had to give him part of the money. The two guineas, I think he had to give him one. So, my father didn't like money, but he needed money for us to live and to survive. So as soon as I could play properly, I became the violinist. So I used to go with him to all these weddings and shift past Mr. Scher and take over the foot pedals and play for my father. And he used to sing lovely songs, Israeli songs, Jerusalem songs, whatever they wanted. Why am I on to my father and he's singing?
So when the diplomat who was
yes, class. When he sang with them, yes. Yeah, that was when I was child, right, in 1948. In 1960, not 60, 54, I went to university. And I used to take a bus from where near us. I had to go over the fields and take a bus to the train station in Salt River, and then a train to university. And this big black car stopped for me. And it's Joseph. Joseph, he recognized me standing at the bus stop. And so I arranged very quickly that I would be at the same time every day, because there was a little boy in the back seat of this car, very low down, and he was the son of the ambassador, Goitain. We had a South African, Israeli ambassador to South Africa, Goitain, and this was his son. And Joseph was driving him to school, and I would get a lift part of the way, you know, all the way to below the university, and I would walk up to the university. I didn't have to take the bus and the train, which was good. Later, this boy at the back of the bus in Israel, when I came to Israel and became the pediatrician at Hadassah, I didn't tell you about that part, but I became the neonatologist at Hadassah. And at night, if I wasn't on duty, the ordinary pediatricians would do rotation, and they sometimes did terrible things that I found in the morning, what they did to the babies. And so I suggested to the professor, who never came to my department, ever, Englishman, Professor Russell, he never came. I suggested to him that I have a rotation of these other young doctors to my department. Let them be with me for a week or two or more. I was on my own in the newborn unit. And so I can go back a little bit and go back to 67. When I arrived, they laughed at me when I went to the Sokhnut or wherever I had to go to say, I'm here, your volunteers arrived. They laughed and said, we don't need you, the war's over. It wasn't quite over because it was still going on in the north, but they said, it's finished, we don't need you. They arranged for me to go to Norpan. Okay, I learned Hebrew. Then I thought I better find a job. So I was in my parents' home in Motza, which we moved into, my mother and I, a half-finished house, no windows, no water, no electricity. It was like being camping there, because all the workers had been taken to the war, so they couldn't finish the job. They expected it to be finished by when we came. So we tried to fix up the house. I hung sheets on the windows until the glazier came back from the war. Anyway, that was a difficult period, but it was okay. So I went to the 3 hospitals in Jerusalem. And they all said, oh, pediatrician from Cape Town, yeah, start on Sunday. Start on Sunday. Bikur Cholim, Shaare Tzedek, Hadassah, all want me. So I didn't know what to do. So I thought I needed advice from somebody. So I knew that my professor of pathology from Cape Town, Sachs, Martin Sachs, I think they're from Pretoria originally, the 2 Sachs brothers. There was Martin, who was our pathology teacher, and Theo, who was teaching us infectious diseases and bacteriology. So I went to Martin, who was professor of pediatrics at Hadassah, of pathology at Hadassah. And I said to him, which of these should I choose? What do you suggest? He said, don't come to Hadassah. It's not for you. He knew me. I was his favorite pupil. He He always used to look for, where's Miss Horner, where's Miss Horner? He said, it's not for you. You need elbows, you need to fight your way. It's not for you. You come to Israel, you want to look after the little children, go to Shaarei Tzedek. So I went to Shaarei Tzedek in town. It wasn't this big Shaarei Tzedek. Small little hospital. You probably don't know it.
I passed it. It's still,
The building's
still
there.
there.
They're going to make it into a residential area, I think a Haredi area.
Did you meet Wallach? Was he?
Yes. He was there. And Sister Zelda. And I came not as a consultant. I was a Zionist. I take any job you give me. I came in as a doctor. Okay. I didn't last long there because, not because of this little episode, but I'll tell you the episode. There was a very sick premature baby, and I took to the prematures. You know, that was my hobby, so already from South Africa, because we were ahead of the world in South Africa on babies and on newborns, ahead of the world. So I came with that knowledge already, how to ventilate a child, which nobody knew. I knew everything about babies already, because we had a very go-ahead person in Cape Town, and one of our colleagues had a baby who needed treatment, a newborn. And the whole department decided we would take hourly turns to look after this baby on this new machine. Nobody had ventilated a baby before in the world.
This was a ventilator?
Nobody had ventilated a baby. The ventilator was half a room size. It was an unusual thing. And the baby survived. Okay, we all took turns at suctions, etc. And gradually, this senior doctor of mine, he was a registrar. He became the professor. He became the professor in Joburg. He took to this idea also of newborns, and he opened a small little unit, and that's where we had the newborn unit in Krutsker Hospital. And I stayed with it. Part-time at the beginning, just for myself, because I liked it. And we were inventing things, absolutely inventing ideas of what to do, how to keep the tube in, how to do this. There was no guidebook. Nothing.
No textbook.
Nothing in the literature about how you look after newborns. Nothing. No department in America, nowhere in the world. So in Cape Town we started. Afterwards they said to me, why didn't you publish? You should have published. But I'm not academic in that field. I'm not aiming to be a professor. I was never wanting to become something. I was interested in good management, good treatment, giving the best that I could. Anyway, so at Shaarei Tzedek, one little episode I can tell you of. I had this tiny baby, and it was going into heart failure, and I wanted to give it to Taylor's, I can't remember, a drug. And they never had it for babies. So I had to take this injection, this little vial. I had to calculate the dose of this baby. It was a calculation of 0.4 milligrams per kilogram divided into 3, and I had to work out how many grams I had, how many times I had to dilute this liquid to make it possible to give an injection to this tiny. I couldn't do it in my head, and it was a Shabbat. So I took a piece of paper and I was calculating it, a mathematical calculation. The next day...
And you gave the injection?
Yes.
And the baby
was
survived?
okay, yes. I think so. For how long, I don't know, but it did manage that period. It came out of cardiac failure. Also gave it diuretic. You know, I managed the acute phase. Next day I was called to the big shot, Wallach's office. You did a bad thing yesterday. You should have called the Shabbos Goy to do your calculation for you. We had a Shabbos Goy in the hospital. So I said, and how could I rely on a Shabbos Goy to do such a difficult calculation? It was very difficult, and I showed him the different steps to work out the dose and then how to dilute the 2 cc's to get that minimum amount out of it. So he said, well, it was okay that you wrote, but you should have done it in a separate room and closed the door. The nurses shouldn't have seen you writing. It was the nurses who complained. But that wasn't the reason I left.
But you know, to save a life takes precedence over everything.
But I shouldn't have been seen. They didn't know what I was doing, that girls. I mean, that's what Ein Ra. Later, while in England, I had a similar kind of an episode with my rabbi in the shul. When I said to him, I announced it one day at a dinner table, I'm going to take the bus to shul next time because my husband can't walk the distance. So, how can you do that? So I said, well, the bus stops at our stop. We don't have to pay. In those days, we never paid. We just showed them the ticket. We didn't tap it on anything. And it stops at the shul. So what's wrong with that? It's like taking a Shabbos lift.
Yeah.
And this is at a table in the shul. So he says, no, you're right. You can take the bus. But I don't think you should. Because somebody might see you.
It's called Marita Ayin.
Yes. And they might think that you paid, or that you got the bus to stop by pressing the button, which I didn't have to do because I knew he stops there. You see? The same thing about the writing. I could write, but nobody must see me writing. Anyway, I worked at Sharet Tzedek for 6 months or 5 months. I think I did some amazing, I must have. In fact, it was the first day that I was there in theatre. I was just observing. I was new in the country, new in Israeli medicine. So I went to watch a cesarean section, just to watch. I wasn't working, I didn't have the job yet. And the baby was born and it wasn't breathing from the cesarean section. And the anaesthetist was trying to intubate. You know,
Yeah.
you're a doctor,
Sure.
right? You know, to intubate. And he's struggling and struggling. So I said, can I help? I know how to do it. He'd obviously never done a newborn. So he said, sure. So I came and I put the tube in, went in, and I'm bagging the lungs of this child. And I said, can I borrow a stethoscope? And I'm listening to the chest. And I said, this baby's got a diaphragmatic hernia. The bowel is all in the chest, and it needs to go to surgery. I learnt in Cape Town that with such babies, you don't go for an X-ray, you don't go for anything. You go, this thing is going to break. Gosh, the wind has come up. You don't have an X-ray, you don't do anything, you go straight to surgery to save the child. Most of them die anyway, but some live nowadays. But that's what you've got to do, you can't wait. The bowel starts coming in with air now because the baby's swallowing and you're breathing it, so air's coming in. So they looked at me if I'm crazy. This person who turned up as a visitor says you've got to go to surgery. So they say, okay, we're going to call a surgeon. We've got the anaesthetist here, we'll call a surgeon. He took about an hour and a half to come. He was probably reading up what you do. He wasn't a children's surgeon, he was an adult surgeon. I tell you, it was a terrible business. He I think he operated on a dead baby, but he continued operating. He wanted to finish it. But one of the gynecologists must have told the Hadassah friend of his, who was a professor at Hadassah, about this woman from South Africa.
Did that baby survive?
This girl, no, it was dead before it had the operation. But he did the operation, I think, for practice. I was bagging it, or the anaesthetist took over and was pumping. But I'm sure it wasn't alive. Anyway, some later, you're running out of time. I had a deputation, 2 professors turn up from Hadassah. It was a new professor of gynecology obstetrics they had just joined from Haifa. Professor Polishuk, Zev Polishuk. And the other one was Professor Sadovsky. And his friend was a chap at Shaarei Tzedek who told them about me. So now the 2 of them appear, deputation. Would I be prepared to come to Hadassah to open a newborn unit in their department? So I'm a type of person, you ask to do something, I do it. If I'm at all able to, I do. If I can't, I tell them it's an impossibility. I'm unable, I can't do such a thing. But I said, okay. So they're arranging the job for me. The pediatrician at Hadassah, this Englishman, OBE, Professor Russell, OBE, said we're not wasting a post on the newborns.
Hey.
It was an unknown thing, 66. It was already 68. We're not wasting a post on a full-time person in newborns. The nurses are doing a perfectly good job. If there's trouble, they can call help from a doctor. That was the situation all over the world. In Rena's department as well.
That's Rena Gale?
Yes, she wasn't a newborn specialist. There were no newborn specialists.
Did you work with Rena Gale?
Well, I knew her and we spoke a bit at the beginning when I was already at Hadassah. But at the beginning there was no such a thing as a full-time department of neonatology. There wasn't such a thing. And so he wasn't going to waste the job on me. So this professor would come down from Haifa, and all his women that he looked after there wanted to deliver here. He had difficult patients. He had patients with diabetes and many previous deaths and problem births. They wanted him to deliver their baby. So he wanted somebody to be looking after their babies. So I said yes. Pediatricians don't want me. So the obstetrician said to him, well, okay, if you don't want her, we'll employ her as a gynecologist, but she'll be our pediatrician on the team. On a gynecology obstetrics post. I'll make a post for her in obstetrics. So they relented and he gave me a job as a pediatrician. But didn't like me from the start, so never came to my department, never interfered.
And how long were you at Hadassah?
Till 7, 8 years, something, until I left the country. So before that, I was in the army. Suddenly I got conscripted. I didn't even know what this letter said. I couldn't read Hebrew very well. I went to Ulpan, but I couldn't read. So the nurse says to me, you've got to go to Tel HaShomer on such and such a day at such and such a time. Okay, I already had a nice car. I drove to Tel HaShomer. I come to the boom. There was a boom in the old days. The guard says to me, what you going? I said, I got a letter. He says, no, it's not here. It's the army base behind us, Tel HaShomer army base. So I'll go around to the army base, and I come to, there they let me in, of course. I've got the official invitation, and I see the head of the medical corps. Have you been in the army? You didn't do the army. So I'm get invited by this, can't remember his name, it starts with a G. The head of the medical, the general. And there's tea, coffee, cakes, cookies, whatever I want, have a seat, and I sit down. I still don't know why I'm there. So he says to me, "You Ruth Horner, are you related to Jackie Horner?" So I say, "Yeah, he's my brother. He's in the army," I said. So he said, "Yes, I know he's in the army. He's in my unit. He's getting a Tzalash, a bravery award." So all he wanted to do was talk about my brother. My brother's schooling, my brother's chess championship, my brother's this, my brother's that. So I'm looking at my watch and I say, "Well, is there a baby or somebody? Why did you call me here?" But I still don't know why I'm there. I'm 30 years old, 32, 31 already. I said, "Why? What am I doing here? Can I help you with anything?" So he says, "No, you're coming in. You're starting an officer's course next Sunday." And I said, "And what's going to happen to the babies in Jerusalem?" So he said, "No, they'll manage without you." But they didn't. There was nobody in my place. The nurses once again, with a doctor if necessary. So I was based at the Central Command in Tel Aviv with all the big shot generals. We used to have lunch together, Moshe Dayan, Dado, all the big shots. And I was the doctor there.
You remember Moshe Dayan?
Huh?
You remember Moshe Dayan?
Yeah, he came. One day they brought him to me. He had got sand in his good eye. I didn't even let him into the office. I said, "Call the ambulance straight away." They took him to Tel Hashomer. I didn't want to start with him. What with his other eye? You know, only one eye got something in it. Yeah. I met him once because when I was in the Matkal, the Central Command, in the clinic, there's a clinic, and I had a horrible job because who are the soldiers who come to the clinic? The officers don't come to my clinic normally, right? I'm just a lowly doctor. The officers go to somebody else, somewhere. But the ordinary soldiers come to me. So who are the soldiers? What kind of people are these soldiers in the Central Command? They are the drivers. They are the people who scrape the ground with a rake to make it. They're the ones who paint the white stones. They are the soldiers who are not going to the proper army. They're not, but they're in the army. They're not doing any kravi or anything important. And what's their aim in life? Their aim in life is to get a gimel, a 3 days pass, a 3 days off to get home. So I had this long queue every morning, and they start a new doctor, so they try it out on me. I got a sore back, I can't walk, I got a sore back, I can't possibly be a driver. Sore back, sore back. So I give him his 3 days off. The next one also sore back. The next one's also got a sore back. So I just dropped my pen. I had to do tricks. I dropped my pencil or pen on the floor and I said, "Okay, come and sit here, but pick up my pencil, do me a favor." So he bends down and he picks it up. So I said, "Oh, that's fine. You got a sore back still? Take some Acamols. That's it." Give him a prescription. Okay, it didn't last long, the sore backs. The next episode was diarrhea. You can't work with diarrhea. Diarrhea. When I got tired of the diarrhea, I said, "Right, here's a bucky, a dish. I need a sample. Go next door, here's a toilet, bring it to me." finished with the diarrheas. You know, it was more psychological than anything with those soldiers.
And how long were you in this position?
2 years and 2 months, yeah. And, or just under 2 years. Just under. Because they transferred me at the end, right at the very end. I've been requesting to be in Jerusalem all the time. Because I used to hitch every day back home after the Central Command. At 5 o'clock I used to hitch home to Jerusalem, to Motza, pick up my car and drive to the Hadassah. Without permission, without...
And it was voluntary? You did
voluntary, no cover, no medical cover by anybody. I used to go in and see the babies and look at what was written and what needed, etc. Mad. I think a bit cuckoo.
You were so committed.
A bit cuckoo. And so I requested from the beginning to be transferred to Jerusalem. And right at the end I get transferred, it was winter, February, I get transferred to Schneller. And Schneller I had to sleep in. They insisted I sleep in. Couldn't go home at night. So I had this little tiny bed with one blanket, ice cold, no heating, in the middle of winter. It lasted, I think, for about 2 weeks, and then I got my discharge. But it was the last 2 weeks of my service I froze in February. Anyway, I knew...
Can I just ask, during this time, did you meet with Rabin?
Rabin, no, but when I was in Matkal, in the Central Command, a little soldier came to me one day and said, "You've got to come to see the head of the army. He wants to see you, wants to meet with you." It was quite early on when I moved there, very early on. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know very much. I was new to the unit. So I come, this little soldier says, your cap's got to be straight. He straightens it for me. Okay. You've got to polish your shoes. Straighten your tie. I had a tie. It was winter. And you salute when you go in. So I didn't even know how to salute. So he took me to the door. And I'm standing at the door. And come in, there's a call, enter. So I open the door and I go in, and I'm supposed to salute. I don't know how to salute. I know the Americans do this way. I didn't know what to do with my hand. So I took a few steps forward, and I put my hand out, and Dado, you know the Ramatkal, Dado, jumps up from his chair and shakes my hand. There were 3 generals. There was Moshe Dayan, there was Dado, and there was Chich. Chich, I can't remember his real name. He became the mayor of Tel Aviv.
That's right.
The 3 of them sitting there. They sitting like dead people. But Dado was lovely. He wanted to meet the new doctor of the unit, and he jumped up from his chair. There was a little coffee table. He jumped up, came round and shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the unit. If I can help in any way." Didn't look to see if my shoes were polished. It was a difficult time. Not difficult, but I managed. You know, I'm a Zionist. What can I do?
And then afterwards you came back to Hadassah?
No, because the next day I flew out to London.
The next day?
No, I went to London. Yes, I flew out to London. Because I now wasn't officially anymore in the department, right? I was all the time volunteering.
Did they get a replacement?
While I was in the army, no. They had the doctors called in if they had to, when they needed. But no full-time person. But when I was in the army, my boyfriend, who was my boyfriend in Cape Town, later my husband, and he came past when I was in the army with his mother, who came to Israel, back to Israel. She was born in Rosh Pena. And eventually her husband died, so she wanted to get back to Tel Aviv, to live in Tel Aviv. So she came, I was a soldier, and he brought her, and they helped her move into the flat, and I helped also. And I was a bit wary of him because I'd left him. I was a bit wary. And he said to me, and so then we got back again into our normal friendly situation as boyfriend. And he said to me, well, when you finish the army, come to London. I've now got a job in London. Come to London. We've wasted all these years, he says to me. So I say, I haven't wasted.
What was his position?
He was a hematologist, and at the Dasa, reader, I don't know, one below the professor. He never wanted to be professor, but he became professor, but never head of department. I wouldn't let him be that. It's not a job to be a head of a department. It's madness. You can't do medicine as a head of a department. And he was interested in his patients also. So I finished the army. I had to go to Tel Aviv to do this. You stand in a queue, you hand in your tie here, your jacket here, your trousers that you brought with you here, your shoes you don't give off, you keep your shoes. And at the end of the line they say, next. There's a gate and you go out the gate, a swing gate, and you're finished with the army. So I said, what? No shaking hands, nobody, nothing, no goodbye, no thank you, nothing. That's how I finished my army. You go to this place where you hand in all your equipment and you go out into fresh air, that's it. Took a bus home, or the car, I can't remember. But then I was in London. I was on holiday, right, from Hadassah. I hadn't left. So I'd finished the army, I'm supposed to come back. And I went off and got married. Stayed there, had to wait a few months because we had to get certificates that he's Jewish and that I'm Jewish. We had to prove things, you know, and get the certificate from the Beth Din and all of that. And then we got married in the Grange Road shul. And I phoned up the professor here at Hadassah and I said, you know, after the army I came to London and I got married. He didn't even know I'd been here doing those unofficial ward rounds. So he said, I said, can I resign? He said, no, you come back for 3 months to resign. I had to come back, put in my resignation, and then leave 3 months later. So I had to come back. So I came back for 3 months. Married.
Were they good 3 months?
3 months I managed. He was in London and I was here. Oh. And so they made me a party that, you know, I was now married and got in touch with my new mother-in-law's family and they came out to meet me, etc. A funny little story.
And Ruth, when you came back for those 3 months, how did you find the department?
It continued as it was. I mean, the babies change, you know. Every day they're new babies, ordinary babies, and the premature babies, some of them were still there and some had already most of them had been discharged because 3 months is quite a long time. I was saying about...
you met your in-laws.
About my in-laws, yes. On one of my father's trips when he was a young man in Israel, in Palestine, he got as far as, what's that most northernmost place? in the country.
Rosh Hanikra?
No, more east. The other one going Syria, Lebanon. No. Oh gosh, switch it off and I remember the name. The topmost point of Israel.
By the Golan?
Not on the Golan, we never had the Golan. Anyway, it'll come to me. So my father went, was in his trips, he went there and he got a job, he was looking for a job at the time when he didn't want to work on the kibbutz, and before he got the malaria, before he joined the music orchestras, he was looking for jobs all over the country, and one of the jobs he found was in Petach Tikva, and once he even saved Petach Tikva. They were under attack by the Arabs who were coming to burn the houses in Petach Tikva, and there were no phones or anything, and my father ran from Petach Tikva to Jaffa. He ran from Petach Tikva to Jaffa to notify the British police to come and save Petach Tikva. That's a little story on the side. It's not in the book, but it's the story my father told me, that he had to run between the horses' legs. I don't know which horses he was talking about, but he had to run between the horses' legs.
It's quite a distance from Petach Tikva.
Yes, well, he was a marathon runner. He won, he won all the marathons.
And the police came in there.
And the police came and they saved Petach Tikva. Petach Tikva wasn't very big, and the Arabs were coming to light the houses. Not with no guns, but they were coming with lapidot, lights. So, and one of the jobs he found, he went as far north as...
Is Ma'alot?
Rosh Hanikra. No, you said Rosh Hanikra. It's not Rosh Hanikra. No, higher, the top. No, I meant to have a look. Anyway, on the map of Israel there's the point that goes up that's been terribly bombed now in this war, and all the people were almost gone. They left it. Anyway, my husband's family uncle was the head of the yeshuv there.
Kiryat
Shmone. Good. I have a name problem. So we got to Kiryat Shmone, and this man wrote a book about Kiryat Shmone, because he later moved to Tel Aviv and became an important person in Tel Aviv with the Vard of Tel Aviv and everything, but he wasn't my family, he was my husband's family. Anyway, he wrote a book later, so when he came to Jerusalem to meet me, when I got married, to meet the new woman in this family of his wife's family really, he brought a book and he gave my father, they chatted together, and they realized that my father was the man in his book that he's writing about. He didn't call him Horner because he obviously couldn't remember Horner. He called him a different name with an H, with a hey, Horner or something else, but not Horner. And in his book about Kiryat Shmone, he writes, one day this young man turns up walking into our yeshuv, and all the people are crowding around him to find out what's going on in the world, because we've got no news from anywhere. I've got the book here. I was trying to translate that passage, but I'm not going to bother. I thought I'd add it to this, to the story that my sister wrote, the Remember Judy book, this one. But because she added things over the years as well. And so this was my father, who had arrived on this place and wanted a job. And they were at the committee, they were discussing, and he writes about the committee discussion. Can we trust the person who's walked in and looks like that? like such a schlumper, can we trust him? And another man says, yes, of course we can trust him. He's Jewish, he's here, he's one of us. That was the discussion on their committee. Eventually they decide to take him on as temporary, not a full-time. So he becomes a temporary member of this Kiryat Shmone. Overnight the place changes because he's a temporary guard, and up to then the guards used to sleep at night, and the Arabs around would come and steal the chickens and the cows and everything. And as soon as my father arrived, of course he took his job seriously and would wake up the other guards and stay awake, we are guarding the place. So they had no more thefts and things like that. It's all in the book. So that was just an aside. I don't know how we even got onto the subject. From army, from what?
It was your family, your husband's family that...
Oh yes, that was the connection. That they came to Jerusalem to meet the new person, and then he brought me this book,
about
and then I got a bit more story about Kiryat Shmone. And I don't know what more there is to say, really. So I lived in London all these years.
And where did you work in London?
I couldn't work as a neonatologist because that's nights. That's, as far as I knew, that meant a 24-hour job, because when I was at Hadassah, I often used to sleep in the pre-labor ward. I didn't know where to sleep, so I would go to sleep in the labor ward, before delivering. And in the morning, sometimes they would come and say, "Who's this? When is she due?" And I would say, no, I'm just renting this bed. Because 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe I was still asleep. But, so I thought it was a full-time job, neonatology. So I never even bothered to look for it. And I had my mother-in-law living with us from the first day. That was a package that I hadn't agreed to, I hadn't been asked about. But when I got back 3 months later, after marrying, came back from Israel, into the flat that we had decided on together, which flat we would live in, bought the flat. I didn't stay there. I came to Israel. When I get back there's the flat. A few bits of furniture, almost nothing, but there's almost nothing. Beds, my husband slept on the floor, our bed was waiting for me, and mother-in-law is installed in the main second bedroom. And it was just a fait accompli.
You weren't consulted?
No. And I just accepted it. He was an only child. Mother was besotted with her son, as if an only child. It wasn't easy because she was well at the beginning for a year or two, and then she became bedridden and refused, virtually bedridden. She could go to the bathroom. But I became her carer, and she didn't want anybody else. And it wasn't easy, so I took an easy job. I went into community pediatrics at a low level again. I just went into the community pediatrics, but they promoted...
Was it at a hospital?
No, it was in the community, a clinic, like a Tipat Chalav here. So I did Tipat Chalav, made fantastic diagnoses, sent them straight off to surgery and things like that. you know, I had the connection with the Hammersmith Hospital because I used to go there for the ward rounds. But I couldn't I couldn't take on a proper big job. Anyway, when my mother-in-law did pass away, I was immediately put up to be in charge, and I was already in the main unit, in charge of 13 clinics and running the show, and 2 million babies. I had to organize their vaccinations. Didn't do them, but I was the manager and organizer and of the GPs and the whole thing. And then I took on, they kept loading me with other jobs. There was a lady who was in charge of child abuse, pediatric child abuse, and she retired. So they asked me to take it on while she's away. So I took it on for 9 years. You know, with the police, with the social workers, with the courts, with the murder stories. That was an extra bit. And then they add something more. They could see that they ask me and I do it. So I took on all the neonatal screening, the management of the neonatal screening, which meant we were sort of half computerized. I used to go through it and check who hasn't had the heel pricks, and I would invite them and I would do it, you know, to get 100%. I was interested in 100% of everything. And I did get. We were the highest in England of, for example, there was a MMR, measles, mumps, rubella epidemic almost, and a push that every child had to have the injection. And it was my job to see that it all gets done. There were 2 million people. So in the big area, it wasn't just my small area of West London, big area of West London. So it meant going to the GPs, getting the nurses ready for that. And then we had clinics, we had 13 clinics, so we had nurses. So I had to order the equipment, so I had to order fridges. So I became a kind of a manager, you know. I had to organize the rota. I had all these 25 schools, and we couldn't, I made teams of nurses to go out to do it. I had to do it according to the wishes of the school.
And Ruth, you got a pediatric fellowship?
Yes, Royal College of Physicians, Pediatrics. That was the fellowship I got. But it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
It's a very big deal. Can I ask you, coming from UCT, I'm sure everybody must ask you, did you ever have contact with Chris Barnard or Maurice Barnard?
Yes. In my pediatric training, I had to do 3 months of something different. And they offered us 3 months of hematology or 3 months of cardiology. And the cardiology was working with Chris Barnard. And I thought, well, let me investigate the cardiology one first. And I went with my predecessor, the one who was going to finish his period with Chris Barnard. So I joined him. And I joined him in the theatre when Chris was operating on a child. And we were watching on the monitor. My colleague it was his job, I was just watching. And he had to report to Chris, and he reported what he saw. And Chris got so furious, he started swearing at us. Both of you, get the effing hell out of here. I don't want to see your faces. So I said, I'm not going to do cardiology. I can't work with this man, right? So I chose hematology. as my choice. And that was with my husband. I didn't know him at the time, so that's where I ended up in hematology. But Chris, my husband, knew him very well. And my husband, Reuben, was brilliant in everything really, but his English and his writings were out of this world. They were perfect. The Lancet in London used to ask him to check the articles for the language. And Chris Barnard was writing his thesis. And he said, he came to Reuben and he said, ach man, you people are so damn clever, you people.
Meaning the Jews?
Yes, of course. You people are so damn clever. Can you check through my thesis? And Reuben said to me, he actually rewrote the whole thing.
Reuben did? Your husband did?
He did. He had to. He said it was so bad, he had to rewrite the thesis. Obviously not, it was on dogs and, you know, it wasn't on humans, it was all about dogs. His work on dog hearts and stuff. So he wasn't one of our favorites. But he became world famous, and at the first open heart operation, he had a team. And on the team was a hematologist, and that was Reuben.
He was on the team?
On the team. And there's photographs and there's videos on the internet. I watched the videos. And so they had a hematologist, they had an anaesthetist, they had a pathologist, a blood pathologist for the matching of the blood, you know, that had
Was this the first heart transplant?
The first one, yes.
Washansky, yeah.
And I had the file here, because my husband, he took ill after that, okay? That was soon, at around about the same time, and he took ill, and then packed up to come to London, etc. And maybe my timings are a little bit out here of years, but the file of Washansky ended up in London, in our flat. And I was looking at this one when I was clearing the place to come here. I thought of clearing all my husband's things because they had a whole office full of books and papers and slides, and I had to get rid of everything. I didn't bring them here. And so I thought, what on earth do I do with this? So a woman came from Cape Town, a friend of Reuben's. She was the head of Groote Hospital, Reeve Saunders. She was a good friend of ours. She used to come to London to visit us when Reuben was alive. We used to come stay with me and we'd go out to eat and things like that. And she came after he died, and I said, I've got this. And so she took it to put it in the museum. There's a museum of the open heart. Yes, yes, so that's where it went. So I got rid of it that way.
Well, you donated it. It's very valuable.
I don't know, important too for the museum, yes, yes. The original file, a big folder, you know.
And Ruth, can I ask you, how do you feel UCT, unfortunately, has become extremely anti-Israel?
Yes, yes. I'm not donating anymore. I had donations after Reuben died, the big donations. I stopped. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. Shoot me for that.
No, they became, to boycott Israel, they're one of the first.
Yeah, no, I've stopped now. I stopped the donations. Finished with them.
It's very upsetting. It's such a...
Don't think that there wasn't anti-Semitism in England. Reuben worked, I'll tell you an episode. You've got to, I mean, you can edit all these things out.
So important.
He worked at the Hammersmith. He chose the Hammersmith, where to work in the world. He could have got the Mayo Clinic, they offered him a post. Toronto General offered him a post. He travelled all over, some more places in America, and got to England, but he decided he wanted to be in England with Professor Dacey at the Royal Postgraduate Medical School. So he took a job there, and he worked there for some years. Dacey died, and one of the others became a professor. He never wanted to be head of department. And the chap became an alcoholic. And for some reason, I don't know why, Ruby didn't sort of protected him. You know, he was head of department, so you don't have to see patients a lot. But he did, when he was half sober, he managed. And then he decided, this professor left to go to another hospital, King's College. So he said to Ruby, come with me. He could see he was relying on Ruby. So, and they took some of the staff as well, the laboratory staff. So they all went off to King's College Hospital in Dulwich. And on the first day that Ruby was there, he came back home. I said, how was your first day? So he said, well, we had a committee meeting to appoint a new consultant. And he was in shock. So I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they had each of the doctors around the table. There was a Sir this and a Lord that, and, you know, big high shots, high important people. And they all got the resumes of the shortlist, and they had to choose somebody. So he said, I went through them all, and I chose somebody. And when they came to me, who do you choose? He said the name. And the chairman, who was a Sir, he said, no, we don't want another Jew in this place. And this was very early on, end of the 70s. Could be end of the 70s, 1980. I mean, a long time ago. We don't want another Jew here on the staff. And one of the others, a very important chap, a doctor, I've forgotten his name, with a G, who came to Ruby later and said that he's Jewish. Nobody knew he was Jewish. He had hidden his Jewishness. But he said he knew there was anti-Semitism in King's College. So he was there for many years and nobody knew he was Jewish. But how did he know Ruby was Jewish? Because there was a Yom Kippur and he said he wasn't going to be coming. So he realized he was Jewish. To some committee or something that was going to be on Yom Kippur. So he said, no, I wouldn't be coming. It's, you know. So he came and he asked him, why, you're Jewish? He said, yes. So he said, well, I am too. Nobody knows.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was England.
And today we see so many nights openly in the NHS.
Yeah. No, but it always was there. In Cape Town, you asked me much at the beginning, did I feel if there was anti-Semitism in Cape Town when I was growing up? Sure. We were poor, right? We lived in this big house that my father built, a big square house. Because that's what he knew houses should be, you know, like in this big square house with corner windows. My mother wanted double story. So, and the other people who lived in the tiny little houses around us were people who had come back from the war, because there were dairy farms around us which were changed into housing estates for the returning soldiers after World War II. And these people were anti-Semites, and they thought we were very wealthy, you know, in this big house, and you bloody Jews. My brother, I saved him from killing a boy. There was a boy on a bicycle, and my brother must have been all of 8 or 9, and the boy on the bicycle called him, you're a bloody Jew. So my brother got him off the bicycle and was choking him. And I could see the chap was going white and then red, and then I thought he was going to die. So I pulled my brother off. of course there was anti-Semitism. But the Jews in Maitland, the nearby area that I was part of, I mean, they were in their little
It's like a bubble.
Kaboon, bubble. Yeah. They didn't mix with non-Jews. I mixed with non-Jews, I could hear. And even in London, the mayor lived in the same block as me, right opposite. On the same floor, there were 2 apartments, and he lived in the one opposite. So we became very friendly. And we were also you people. What do they mean, you people? You know, we were speaking English, we were very English, we behaved English. They knew we go to shul, I suppose. They could see us walking down on a Shabbat. And they saw the mezuzah. In fact, there was a Polish lady living 1 floor below, and she saw the mezuzah and she came to us. And she apologized for the Poles. She apologized for the Poles, what they did to the Jews. We became friends because she had a big estate somewhere in Poland which was commandeered by the Nazis. They just took her whole estate and she had to leave. An estate with animals and big buildings and stuff. And so she didn't like the Nazis, but she apologized. She saw the mezuzah.
Well, it's so sad. In Swiss Cottage, they've had weekly demonstrations against Israel in Swiss Cottage.
I know.
And when they had the posters of the hostages, they were torn down within minutes.
And what about yesterday?
And yesterday.
What about yesterday?
Yesterday with the shooting.
They're shooting over there, and then there's a demonstration against Israel.
2 were killed in Manchester.
Together. Yes. Yeah.
So Ruth, what message? Can I ask Ruth? You've experienced so many things, and your father and your mother.
I've been rambling.
No, your life story and your family is incredible.
It wasn't a proper thread. I should have prepared for
No,
this.
it's amazing. It's so natural and it's so incredible. But what message do you give?
We were Zionists from birth. And if you're not a Zionist, you won't survive in this world. That's what I think. And it's the only way Israel will survive, if there are Zionists out there who will eventually, come if something happens to us.
Ruth, you write on the Times of London.
At the beginning of the war, we were told, if you can help in any way, if you can make donations, do so. I have a cousin, the Bobrov daughter. She used to make 250 meals every day to send hot meals in hot platters. They went off to the army. People here used to bake cakes and collect sweets, etc. A soldier came onto the television who said, "Please don't send us any more cakes and sweets. What we need is the following." And he read a list. We want wet wipes to wipe our sweat off our brows. We need wipes for our feet when we get blisters on the back of our feet, and plasters. We need blood tourniquets if we injure ourselves, and before the medics can come, that we can put it on. He made a list. We need scissors. We need a needle. He gave a long list of things. Okay, so I go and I start making 20 packs of these things, and that was my physical contribution. And then they said, I heard them saying, if you have any foreign language and you have connections abroad, and if you can talk to the press or in any way influence our position or tell our story. So I get the Times every day, Times of London online, and if you're fully registered for the Times, you can make comments. I don't even want to say what my name is on the Times because they don't know it's me. They don't know I'm Israeli. They don't know I'm Jewish. They think I live in London, according to what I write. I don't make my own comments, but I comment on comments. If somebody writes something wrong, I will correct them and I will tell the proper story. And I get hundreds of agreements, likes. They can agree with me or disagree or answer me. Many of the answers are, you're obviously employed by Mossad, or the Israeli government is influencing you, or you're not reading the right newspapers, or getting the right information, or you're a filthy Zionist and you don't admit it, or terrible anti-comments, the worst ones you can imagine, drop dead. I mean, terrible things. If I make correct somebody's false statement, and they are false statements, and I will say, no, I watch Al Jazeera, by the way. You can't watch Al Jazeera, right? In Israel it's banned. But I have my second computer imagines it lives in London. I have it for watching London television. So I can do anything as a person living in London. So I can watch Al Jazeera. So I've been watching Al Jazeera. It's disgusting what they've been saying. Disgusting. And the articles, the statements in Al Jazeera are picked up by the British press. And then I will comment and I will say, oh, I just heard that on Al Jazeera, but that's not true. You know, somebody says something. I say, no, it's not true. I heard it. I heard exactly what you're saying on Al Jazeera, but it's not true, and I'll tell them the correct thing. Oh, you're employed by Mossad. You know, but I try.
And you've had positive comments as well?
Lots of people who agree with me, and they do similar things, because I'm not the only one.
It's amazing what you're doing.
But I try. I don't mind the insults. I can live with that. But I haven't managed, I don't think, to change anybody's mind. So
you never know.
So every now and then I write there that I think this will be my final statement, because I can't see that anybody is worth arguing with. And then I will get replies from all the other pro-Israelis who don't all live in Israel. They're also from England or America or elsewhere, who will say, no, we've got to continue this fight. I'm now one of them. They don't know who I am. They think I'm British because I talk about our government, in our London. They were talking yesterday about it's disgusting that we in England supply the bullets to kill those people in Gaza. So I wrote, no, we have now banned exporting bullets from Britain. You know, the export from Britain is they don't send bullets anymore, and they don't send the parts to the aeroplanes. Everything else continues. But those two things they don't do anymore. That's all I know. Maybe they've changed since then, but so I wrote that. I haven't had any responses to it. No likes, no dislikes, but I haven't looked because it was last night only.
And Ruth, you coming back to Israel, are you happy with your decision that you're living here?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Ruth, I am so grateful to you. There are no words to thank you. I think if we look at the book that your sister wrote, Remember Judy, remembering about your family and your parents, it's really remarkable what your parents achieved.
What they went through.
And you know, your father must be so, and your mother, so smiling from above that 3 of their children did medicine, and you were like amazing how you saved so many children's lives, so many babies, and you were so dedicated. You must be one of the most dedicated doctors that this country's ever seen.
No,
Really,
don't exaggerate. There are many
it's
doctors.
amazing.
You're exaggerating.
Not at all.
You
Not
are,
at all.
you are
Ruth, I
less.
think you are
I'm
unique.
just,
Ruth, you are unique. You are so sincere and so dedicated. And hearing your story, and it's just been such a privilege and an honor to be here.
Thank you
I'm
very
so
much.
grateful
I'm
to
sorry
you.
I just went on and on
Not at all.
ad-libbing as much, wherever it took me,
I think,
backwards,
Ruth,
forwards,
I think
backwards again.
It is just fascinating and unbelievable. I just have to mention one thing, which I'm very upset about, that you experienced such anti-Semitism. I, on the other hand, when I went to university at Wits in South Africa, I went with a kippah on. They accepted me. If we had to change the exam,
I was talking about younger age, when I was a child.
But I never had that experience.
At university, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it at the university. In fact, with the 6-Day War, on that day before I left, or a few days before I left, I got lots of letters and wishes from all the non-Jewish people. No, I didn't feel anti-Semitism at university, but as a child I definitely did feel it, because I grew up in a non-Jewish area. I lived in a non-Jewish area, and things like that.
But I think it's so important that we have our own country and that we can feel free in our own country.
Absolutely. I came back. My parents came back also. I mean, we were always going to come back. We had family portraits every year for a new passport, and every year it was delayed. We're not coming back, we're not coming back, we're not coming back yet. Not yet, not yet. This one has to finish junior school, this one has to finish high school, this one has to go to university. So every year they put off the coming back.
Well, I'm so grateful to you.
And thank you.
Shana Tova, and you should just be blessed, and you are amazing, and I'm so happy that I was here. I'm extremely grateful.
Stop with the praise.
Ruth, no, really, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It was quite nice chatting about these things which I don't have a chance to do.
I'm extremely grateful.